Hello and welcome back to the course. In this lecture, we are going to do an overview of the case study. So the case study is going to focus on an organization that is selling the fictional product Heart Monitor Plus, which is a medical device. And what they've done is they put together a survey so they can better understand how different medical professionals feel about the product. Both the different types of medical professions within the profession. So for instance, there are nurses and there are surgeons, but also see if there's any geographic changes, maybe between North Carolina and California. So here are the kinds of insights that they are looking to glean from this survey analysis. There are really two main types of insights. They want to better improve their marketing, and they also want to double check that their design and their UI, their user interface, is actually really good and those who are using it are enjoying it. And if there are any major gripes, that they can give them the space to voice that, and then if it's a major enough problem, they can switch things around and change that interface. So they just want to know what kind of, for example, on the marketing, they want to better understand the best features. So maybe nurses are liking the fact that it's, I think the lightweight and portability of this is a huge value add. They can also start to make marketing claims. For instance, 4 out of 5 surgeons agree that the lightweight and portability of this medical device is very good or cool or whatever. And they can specifically figure out which features are the best of this product and then use that front and center in the marketing. So that will hopefully increase the return on investment on marketing spend. But then on the other side, on the design UI, this is an excellent way to get feedback on what's working and what's not. So they can identify problem areas. For instance, maybe the administrators are unclear on the instructions because it was designed by a surgeon or someone who has experience working with surgeons. So they're using vernacular or terms that, maybe administrators or nurses don't quite understand, but surgeons find it intuitive. And also, these insights could be applied to future products. So they're using this as kind of like a case study and what do they call that? A focus group. So if the nurses really love the lightweight and portability, and that's across the board, that's probably, and you may want to do multiple surveys across different products, but you've identified that nurses value this specific trait. So if you are going to be building out future products that are geared towards nurses, you need to really understand that, okay, the lightweight and portability of this is very important, so we need to focus our design around that constraint. That pretty much wraps up this lecture. I just wanted to give you an overview of the case study, both, who is this organization that we're studying, and then why. Why do they want to study this survey data? I'll see you in the upcoming lectures. Happy learning. Hello, and welcome back to the course. In this lecture, we are going to walk through the raw survey data. So it is an Excel file, and it's labeled Survey Workshop. So going across the columns here, so here is unique ID. So this is actual real client data that I have, but what I did was instead of having the actual name of the doctors, I substituted an ID number, and instead of actually working with the institutions, I just looked up the top 5 or 6 or whatever medical schools and just used that as the institutions that they're from. And you can see there is state, there's role, so it's surgeon, cardiologist, administrator, nurse, and I think there's one more, coordinator, which the majority of those who filled this out are coordinators. And these, again, are actually, I falsified these as well, but in the actual survey, there were roles that were similar to this. So this case study is very much based off a real-world use case. And then here are the questions, and I kept the questions pretty much the same, except I took and I changed out, this is not the actual name of the medical device. So you can see there are questions just in general of a rating, and then you can see there are rank questions. So they rank ordered certain features, and then there's also check. So you just have an actual check if there was, it would either be a 1 or nothing. So those are the 3 different types of questions that were on this survey. And the whole goal of this survey was to understand, is this medical device serving surgeons well? And then we could dive into, well, the surgeons at Duke have a specific opinion, but it varies very differently from those at UNC Chapel Hill. So they really wanted to understand differences between roles, and then if there are any specific institutions or state-wide differences. So that pretty much wraps up this video. I just wanted to give you an overview of the raw sales data. I'll see you in the upcoming lectures. Happy learning. Hello and welcome back to the course. In this lecture, what we're going to do is connect to the data source, and then what we're going to do is pivot the data so that's in a workable format so that we can start to do our analysis. So I am on a fresh Tableau workbook that has not been touched yet. So let's go ahead and connect to the data source. So it's Microsoft Excel, and if you just downloaded it in one of the previous lectures, it should be in your downloads file. So let's open that up. And this is what it's going to come in. It's going to, so form responses 1, it's going to automatically be pulled in here. And what we're going to see is the same thing we saw in the Excel file. So ID, institution, state, role, and then the questions. So this section of the data source is correct, and we don't want to touch that. But what we're going to want to do is pivot from here onward. So what you can do to create a pivot is highlight this first question here. So it's a little bit grayed. You can see it's different from all the other columns right now. And then let's drag all the way to the last question. And you're not going to want count. You're going to want to drag to this last question here. So hit Shift and then click on this last question. And let's hit this drop-down menu here. And you select Pivot. So what this has done is it's taken all of those different columns and it's flipped it on its side. So now you have all of the column headers here and then all of the responses here. So I like to name this and just double click on the pivot or the calculated column or pivoted column name, and let's just call this question. Hit enter, and we'll call this answer. So now you have successfully created a pivot. What's cool is, so we can now use these as filters. And that works pretty much like how you would if you were working with sales data or marketing data or, supply data. This works the same, but then we're going to have to get into how to work with question and answers. So let's click on sheet 1 and we'll dive a little bit into that. So what happens when you just pull in question and answers is this. It looks really, really messy. And just to give you kind of the high level how it works, what you typically want to do is click on number of records. And then that is going to populate each time for, let's say, let's drag this out a little bit. So what this is telling us is that, do the themes resonate with you? That means 14 people did not answer this question. 54 checked that they do. So that is how you can start to get at understanding survey data. But this is messy and this is not as it is now. But there are ways that we can fix this. So for instance, we can drag in question to filter, and what we can do is let's first click none, and then let's look at all the rank questions. So we can select all of those and hit apply. Now this makes a whole lot more sense. So now you're grouping the questions that are similar. And now we can start to look at, okay, well, let's see, what feature is this? Lightweight and portability has 14. That's their top rank ordered. And so that's number 2. And then you can see that trended parameter graphs, that is number 1 with 17. So there are different ways that we can visualize this data. Let's see what so it's suggesting a bar chart. Okay, so right now this is kind of uncovering a data quality issue that we had with the survey and how it was communicated to those who participated. So the reason that this is split between rank and checked is that it was not clear when we administrated the survey that you were either supposed to check or put a number down. About half put down a number and rank ordered each of these features, and then others just put a check. So if in this situation, this represents those who checked, and we can go ahead and filter those out. And the way we can do that is this answer here. So we can just uncheck that and hit OK. So now we're starting to get at being able to make just a little bit more sense of this. So it actually doesn't make sense for us to have answer 1. Well, I guess so. What this is telling us is that this is the top rank ordered feature. And what this is saying is that trended parameter graphs is number 1, lightweight portability is number 2, and so on. Secured wireless communication is number 3. And then you can see, so okay, trended parameter graphs has the highest number of, it's ranked 2nd. So what we could do is take this question out, and now we're looking at, okay, this is an interesting data point in that, okay, a lot of people rank ordered at least 1, but then it kind of starts to fall off here to where this is telling us that those participants, not very many of them actually ranked all of them 1 through 9. So that's an interesting data quality point to point to. So I hope this lecture, getting into just some of this high-level information, is helping you understand how you can work with survey data and how it's very different from sales and inventory data, for instance. That pretty much wraps up this lecture. I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming lectures. Happy learning. Hello and welcome back to the course. So in the last lecture, what we did was we pivoted the data, and then I walked you through how you can work with survey data and how it's different from, sales and inventory, like a typical data source. So let's build off of that. So where we left off, we just had the count of each answer, and you could see that it kind of tapers off, that some of our survey participants were a little bit lazy and they did not rank order all of the different features. So what we can do is drag question back here where it's got this dotted line, and what this tells us is how many people or how many times each feature was ranked a specific number here. So you can see that this specific feature compatibility, was ranked 2nd, the highest out of any other rank that it had. And you can see that the lightweight and portability is by far the highest rank that this specific feature got. But what I don't like about this is so wordy. What we can do is create an alias to clean this up quite a bit. So what we can do is right-click on this question here and edit alias. So this is a little bit time-consuming, but we can go through and clean up all of these answers. So Okay, so that switched it around. So go through and delete the actual question, because really this is the last little bit here is really all you need to know. So now that makes a huge difference, because now you can actually see what's going on within each of these, and that is highlighted. So this makes a whole lot more sense to the end user who's actually going to be using this report to make a decision. And specifically, these questions are geared towards the marketing. So what feature of the product do we want to get front and center? And it looks like lightweight and portability is probably one of the main things that we should promote to get other medical professionals to buy into having their organization use this specific medical device. So that I just wanted to touch on how you can kind of clean up the data and massage it so it's a lot more easy to work with. That pretty much wraps up this lecture. I'll see you in the upcoming lectures. Happy learning. Hello and welcome back to the course. In this lecture, we're going to do something pretty sexy as far as data visualization goes. In this lecture, we're going to build out a Likert, or I've heard it pronounced Likert chart. And that is, or Likert scale. And that is this. So this is a really potent visualization because what it does two things simultaneously. So this gray circle here is the average rating. And then you can see in the background, you can see how many 5 stars, how many 4 stars, how many 3 stars, 2 stars. And actually we have null in this visualization as well. So that's actually showing 3 dimensions. So this is the percentage of people who did not respond to this question, which is another good data point. So what we're going to do in this lecture is build out a Likert scale for these specific questions, which are related to their marketing. So they want to be able to say 4 out of 5 doctors would recommend or would rate the Heart Monitor Plus a 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. Or they could say the average rating among surgeons is 4.3 out of a 5-star, or something along those lines to better inform their marketing campaigns. So let's jump into that. So where we left off in the last lecture, we had created aliases and started to visualize each individual feature. So let's open up a new sheet, and we can go ahead and pull in the questions. So we're going to pull them into the workspace, and then we're also going to filter. And these questions are not labeled. So it can get a little bit messy. So they are the portability, the PDF, the intuitive user interface, and I believe there is one more. How would you rate? So these are 4 questions that relate to the marketing. And let's hit apply, and that looks correct. So now what we can do is pull in the answers. So click and drag them into this space here. And you'll notice that there are nulls 1 through 5. So null means that someone just did not answer this specific question. And that happens in surveys. So what we can do is drag in number of records to actually see the distribution. So let's go ahead to the Show Me dropdown and see what Tableau is going to recommend. And they're going to recommend a bar chart. So let's just click on that and see what that looks like. All right. Well, this makes sense to me. I mean, you can see some distribution here. It looks like the portability, it looks very much like it's skewed towards 4 or 5 star. But let's do something different than what we did in the last visualization. And let's drag answer into color here. I like this a whole lot better. The colors here look pretty crazy to me right now, but we'll get to that in a second. So first thing, let's take this and switch it from standard view to entire view. So now we can start to see the different distributions of each question. And it's, in my opinion, it's a whole lot more visual. I understand this a whole lot more than I did this kind of visualization. But this is a good starting point. And I'm glad that we touched on this and how to get here. So from a pre-attentive visual best practice standpoint, let's get these wacky colors. It just seems tacky to me. So what we can do is hit this drop down here and hit edit colors. And we can select a color palette. And since this is a rank ordered 1 through 5, I really like using a color grade. So we can start with blue, and it goes from, very light blue to dark blue. And now let's click assign palette. So now that makes a whole lot more sense. Let's apply this. So yeah, so the darker the blue, the more people like it. And you can see just from a pre-attentive, just a visual analytics standpoint, you can see that there are more 5 stars for this question than this question. And this is the one that has the most 5 stars. So you can, instantly recognize that. There is one problem with this though, and that is null. So null doesn't really exist on that spectrum or that continuum between 1 and 5. And what I like to do for this is kind of get it to a color that's off that color gradient. So what we can do is select null, highlight it, and then I personally like to click on Seattle grays, and let's make it darker than that. Okay, so now you can see that's gray. That is not blue or light blue, and hit apply. So now you can start to that stands out to me a whole lot. Like, these are people who did not answer the question. All right, so now we have these questions on this stacked bar chart, and it's horizontal. I really like this visualization. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. But in order for us to get to this place, a few things are going to have to happen. So this has a score ID, and that's what this is made out of, so average score. And let's take a peek at this. So edit. So basically what you're doing is you're turning the answer, which I didn't change this to answer, into an integer. And then we're going to average it. And then also, too, we're going to make it a dual axis chart. So this is actually kind of complex, and hopefully I'm not going through this too fast. So feel free to reach out to me and send me an email or a question if you want some more clarification on this. So the next step we need to do is to create that calculated score measure. So we go to Analysis, select Create Calculated Field, and let's call this Score. And then the calculation is INT, and we can just click and drag answer in. So that is turning the answer into an integer. So let's hit OK. So now we can click here and drag this up. And it's not looking like what we want it to. But that's okay. So what's happening is it's basically mirroring this chart here. And we don't want that to happen. So what we can do is click this score tab here. And all we have to do is just take this answer and throw it off. So now it's gray. And one more step. So hit this automatic drop-down menu here, and instead of automatic, go to circle. So there we go. Now we are starting to get somewhere. So these circles are tiny compared to the other visualization, so let's resize it. Let's take it and make it, well, we can make it bigger than that, actually. That looks pretty good to me. So now let's create a dual axis. So we can hit this drop-down menu here and hit dual axis. Uh-oh, it looks broken, but don't worry. So for whatever reason, Tableau has switched this tab here, this chart here, from a bar chart to a circle chart. So all you have to do is just click bar here, and there you go. All right, so the dots are on, or the circles are on the wrong side of the equation. So what we can do here, right click, edit axis, and just reversed. And we've fixed that problem. All right. So now let's start to think about labeling. So we're going to want to label the circle, and we're going to want to label each of these individually. So all we have to do is drag score into label. So that doesn't look quite right yet, but that's fine. So let's hit the drop down here. So on sum of score, hit format, and let's change the number to custom, and let's just do 1 decimal place. Oh, and we need to also switch the aggregation from sum to average. So there we go. Now it's 4.3, 4.0, 4.3, 4.2. But the alignment is off. So let's hit select label and change the alignment from automatic to centered. Bam. So we've got it. We now have a Likert scale. But let's continue on with formatting it. So we can select this number here, sum of records, and we can click and drag the answer, which you remember the answer is different than the score. So the answer is 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1, or null. And the score is the average of that, or the sum of that. So we can click label here, and now it has automatically, which this is awesome about Tableau, is that it's labeled at 5 here, and it's dark, or it's a dark background, so it's a white, and then it knows that this color gradient kind of switches over to a darker label. All right, and we can change the label here a little bit, and let's just to make it pop a little bit more, let's bold it, and we can bring it to size 12. There you go. All right, and just to pretty it up a little bit more, let's go ahead and hide these different axes, or axi. So all you do is click off show header, and then come down here and do the same, and show header. So now you have a Likert scale. And I think this is a very powerful visualization. That pretty much wraps up this lecture. I hope I did not go through this too fast, but now you have a pretty flashy, eye-catching visualization that you can now build off of for survey analysis. I'll see you in the upcoming lectures. Happy learning.